Most divorced dads aren't failing because they lack discipline. I know that that's probably what you think. They're failing because they're making decisions from the wrong state. I want to talk about state here today because we all know it's true when we talk to somebody and we say, hold on, calm down, calm down, calm down. And that's exactly what's going on with most of the dads that I'm talking to. You don't think your way into better action. You have to state change your way to better thinking. So some of these things are, when you think about it like this, you made good plans in bad states and they didn't stick. Not because the plan was bad, but because the state was hijacked. A regulated man makes different decisions. When you're in an argument or it's contentious, your brain is filled, it's foggy, it's emotional, it's working in this fight or flight mode and it's not a great state. And that's why many times we'll say, "Hold on, calm down, calm down. Tell me what's going on." When you're in a state like that, that is ultimately in many times why you're not getting the progress that you want is because the state that you're in is so trapped, it's so fearful, it's so anxious, it's so worried, it's so your identity is lost and you're trying to create this new identity from a state that is terrified, fearful, and dysregulated. And I've been there. I've sat in those places, and you get inspired, or you're trying to think your way out of something, and you're trying to create a plan, or be a better dad, or create more revenue, or just be more present with your kids. But at the same time, you have all these other things that are attacking you in your mind, and it's causing you to just be in a blender. It's a mental hurricane that you're undergoing, and it requires a state change in order for these other things to change in your life. I want to dig down into that with you today. Again, if this has been helpful for you, this podcast, drop a sub, leave a review, because it helps other dads get the help that they need. Get get it to them. If I can't do it, you can. A couple quick clicks, a couple quick taps on your phone, and you're literally saving a dad's life. 800% higher is the suicide rate with dads. Why? They lose their identity, man. They feel like their world is collapsing and crumbling and they don't know how to get out. This is systems, strategies, and ways forward that I've gone through, that hundreds of other dads have gone through, so that you can live a life instead of your life being defaulted to you. It's time to design it. That's a simple way you can do that. Let's talk about the state, the invisible driver. I was with my son in the car the other night. He had finished a football practice in the winter here, 7-on-7s, and a lot of times these are great times to talk to your kids after these activities because the endorphins are still pumping, especially if you have teenagers. They're much more talkative, man. Tell you about this, tell you about that, tell you about, all these kinds of things. They're in a state of communication. I've also realized that state, I have to be very, very cautious about what I say. They're like a sponge in those moments. They're really taking on everything. It's not my time to criticize. It's not my time to instruct. It's my time to listen. It's my time to help. It's my time to allow them to talk and be in that space. Why? Because that's the state that they're in. They're not in a place usually of correction, of alignment. They're in a state where they want to share. They want to tell you they that about what was going on and how they felt. State is important. So let me tell you, let's talk more about your invisible driver state and what state actually is. It's your nervous system condition. That's your state. It's your hormonal mix. That's your state. It's your emotional posture. That's your state. It's your energy and your focus levels. That's your state. These are all indicators of what your state actually is. The neuroscience of what your state is says, high cortisol equals threat based thinking. If you're a divorced dad, you understand threat-based thinking, threats of your kids, threats of them being taken away, threats of courts, threats of fines, threats of penalties, threats of financial loss, all of these threats. And then what happens is your brain basically goes offline. It's just off. And you default to habit, not logic. So now what happens is your brain goes offline and you're running the systems that you've created over the decades of your life. And those systems are what got you to this point. Those systems are so hardwired into you that they just keep running when your brain is offline, when your brain is under pressure, when your brain is under threat. And you have to, one, become aware to them. You have to have somebody call out your blind spots. And you have to be humble enough to say, this has got to change. If I want to change, it's got to change. Because you don't rise to the level of your values, you fall to the level of your state. And your state is created also through the systems that you put in there. A lot of guys, myself included, common hijacked states post-divorce feel like this. Maybe some of these words sound familiar to you. All right. This is what hijacks this post-divorce state. Fatigue, you'll feel that. Resentment, you'll feel that state. That's a state of fatigue, state of resentment, state of anxiety, state of hypervigilance, state of hopelessness marked as realism. I'm going to talk about hypervigilance for a second because there's a state, again, another conversation I'm reminded of this week with a guy on the East Coast, and it was hypervigilance, man. He was in this state where I got to do this, and I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to cut this off, and just hypervigilant about all these things. And I said, well, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Does it actually matter? Well, I need to do it now. This needs. I was like, do you need to do it now? He had a few months to go, but for him, the state that he was in was hyper vigilant because he was mirroring what he felt his ex was doing to him. And so he felt like he had to be hyper vigilant because she was attacking him and she was taking things from him and she was doing these things to him. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to throw these things out. I'm going, and it became this war with himself, which was also taking up so much energy and so much brain power that it wasn't allowing him to build his business and build his mindset in the way that it should go. It was just these loops, these wirings. His brain was offline and he was reacting and responding the way that he always had been. Always had been. And now these things were firing on habits, not on logic. So here's the way that the lie feels true. So once the state is set, the brain then creates a story to justify it, which is very interesting. You'll find a story that matches the state that you're in. When you're in that state, this happened to me, and because this happened to me, this is what's going on. Because the court did this to me, this is why I feel this way. Because my ex did this to me, this is what I'm, all of these kind of examples. Here's some additional examples about this story. What's the point? There was a dad that I was messaging on Instagram, and he wasn't able to see his kids. And I began to ask him what he was doing, what he was trying. Well, I don't know. I tried this lawyer guy that I knew, and I tried doing this, but it just didn't seem to work. And I said, oh, okay. Did you try anything else? No, I didn't really try anything else. I said, okay. I said, well, let me ask you this. How important are your kids to you? Oh, man, they're everything to me. My kids are everything. Oh, okay. I said, what would it mean to you to get time with your kids again? That would be the greatest thing in the world. I said, well, if it would be the greatest thing in the world and your kids mean everything to you, then why have you given up? And it was a pause. And it was this just very basic question. Because what's happening in most divorced dads' life is they say one thing and they do another. They say time is so important. Gosh, you don't, and we're programmed. We all know it. We don't get more time, but their actions don't reflect that you don't get more time. They'll say they want that their kids are everything to them, but they don't behave in a way that proves that point. They say that they want the greatest things for their life, but their finances will say otherwise in what they put money into. Another thing that they might say is, I'm behind, or I already screwed this up, or I'll start next week. These are stories that happen when you're in a state like this. These stories then become a very strong reality. And they actually are the stories that are linked to how you've believed your whole life, that you just sort of give up. I screwed this up. I'll start next week. I just got to give it time, man. I just got to give it time. No, it's what you do with the time. And so when I get into an individual and I'm sitting with a client, my job is to cut the ties of those stories because those stories will not get that individual to the destination that they want to go. Waiting, I'm behind. Another conversation I had this last week, a dad was talking to me about all these things that he was doing and all these things that he was learning and all of this stuff that was going on. And I said, well, if all this stuff that you're consuming is all good stuff, then why don't you have the results that you want to have? Well, I'm just sort of waiting to see how this happens. Or I said, well, brother, let me ask you another question. I'm not trying to be disrespectful here or anything, but how long you been waiting, brother? He said, man, I've been waiting 8 months. I said, look, from my experience and the dads that I talked to, I said, what you're going through is probably a 60-day thing. And after the 60 days, you probably need to get this thing moving. And again, he was on this story that, you know, I'll start it when everything's right, when all the pieces are right. It just I got to have more things, together, and these things have to put together. And then when that's right, then I can make the move. You got to understand that the clarity comes with the movement. You've got to move to get the clarity, to get the direction, to get that. It doesn't work the other way. And so these stories are what we tell ourselves, and they keep us stuck for years, and they keep us stuck some for decades. It's why when I'm, talking and working with people, like the goal is to cut 10 years, 5 years into 1 year. Like we want to accelerate your life, to cut the crap, to change the story, to change your state so that you can change the results that you want. That's as simple as it is. The framework, which I've said it again in the rational emotional behavior therapy, is your event causes a belief. Your belief causes the emotion, and the emotion causes the action. The belief is the leverage point. What you believe about it, that's it. That's the leverage point. So if you're believing this, we've got to change that. Your brain doesn't tell the truth. It tells the most familiar story. Get that in line. Your brain doesn't tell you the truth. It tells you the most familiar story. And the data and the neuroscience data behind this will show that 50% of the memories that you thought happened, maybe in your marriage or with your kids, 50% of those details are actually inaccurate. And many times, dads are trying to solve the past, trying to solve a problem of the past, and they don't have 100% accurate details on it, which means they ultimately won't be able to solve it. And so then they keep working the story. And the reality is that story is no longer the truth. It doesn't have enough facts for it. Your story is a courtroom lawyer arguing for the state that you're already in. That's what the story is doing to you. Scriptures tell us again in Romans 12 to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. Renewing is not positive thinking. Renewing equals repatterning. It's daily, intentional, practiced. It's positive thinking with a mission. It's a pattern and a system of every single day, every single hour. You're checking in. What is that story? What is that loop? So transformation starts with interrupting the story, not believing it. You got to interrupt it. You got to actually challenge the story and say, is that actually true? Is that factual? Do I know for a fact in the future that that's going to happen? 99 times, mostly 100% of the time, it's false. It's a false reality that you are living in today. You're trying to play it out. Your brain is trying to solve it, and it's not a solvable problem right now. Right now is what you can do with your mind, with your strategy, with your state, so that you can get things going. So let's work on part 3 here, and that's your strategy and what actually changes it. So your state reset is one of these things can change your state. My state change is usually through a workout or through walking. I find that if I get a long enough walk, I'm in a different state. I'm thinking differently. I need to get out from where I am. I need to move. I need to do something. That's what we need to do. We need to change your state. And to change your state, we have to change your physical body. Your physical body is the best way to change your state. So you can walk, you can do a cold plunge, you can cold water on your face, you can do box breathing is helpful for some. Push-ups, it's movement, man. Movement, motion creates emotion. And so what you want to do is you want to change that state. And that's what we got to do to change your story. Your state's got to change. So there's a lot of dads that I talk to, and they're trying to work their vision mission documents, which if you're in our Skool group and you start working through the system and you start to build your vision, many times when you sit down at your desk and you've had a tough day, it's really hard to dream. It's like, man, you maybe you got your bills next to your computer, or you've got, things from the courts, and you're literally sitting in hell and you're trying to create heaven. And that's not going to do it, man. You're going to be underwater every time. So one of the things I suggest is you got to change your state. Go for a walk, go for a run, go for a workout. Then start working on your vision, start working on your mission, and get the crap away from you. You don't need to see all of those things that are dragging you down. So get it away. So you change your state. Why? So you can change your story. And here's some story disruption questions. What am I telling myself? What's the story I'm telling myself here? Is this fact or interpretation? And what's a more disciplined frame? What do I need to think about? Instead of I'm stuck, is I'm untrained here. I failed goes into this is feedback. I'm behind transforms into I'm rebuilding. And this is what you'll find the most successful divorced dads that come out of this on top. This is what they're doing. They've got an old thought, they've replaced it. And then I would add another leg that you have a scripture that is aligned with that as well. Because I want God's word leading you, not as the scriptures aren't, an appetizer. They're the main meal. They're not a side dish. They're the main meal. They're the T-bone, man. They're the cowboy steak. That's what we want. So we flow it through that, right? You want these questions and you think. So here's a little micro move you can do today. Not a big plan. I want you to focus on the next right action. I was messaging a dad in our Skool group the other day, and he was telling me about what was going on, and it was hard, and it was court stuff, and everything that he was talking about was all unknown in the future. And I said to him in a respectful way, but I said, man, what you're saying to me reminds me of a line in the movie Frozen. And if you got a girl, you've seen Frozen. And I said, it's about doing the next right thing. I said, brother, what is the next right thing in this situation? I had a chuckle. I said, man, I'm sure you've watched Frozen 100 times, which I have. And he said, yeah, I get it. I got to do the next right thing. Some of these next right things look like this for dads. Maybe one email that they need to send out, one workout, one boundary, or when I say boundary, it could be one thing they're saying no to. There was a client of mine this other week. We go through his schedule, we go through his time stuff. He had some issues. I said, okay, what happened? And he's a guy that is a people pleaser. that tends to overschedule things. And then it comes back to bite him because he's overwhelmed. And then the overwhelm overflows into his kids. He gets short with his kids. There's, attitude or frustration, or he's overwhelmed. And so that was the situation. It was what did you not need to do? What did you add on that you shouldn't have added on? And he said I added this, and then I did this, little date, play date, and then I added this on top of it, and he goes, it was just too much. I said, okay, then we need to set that boundary. We need to get that off the table. Why? Because you need to be a great dad for your kids, not for everybody else. You need to be for what you need to do, where you want to go. And the direction he wanted to go was that he wanted to have that margin for his girls and presence and time with them. And he didn't want to feel frustrated when he was with them. Sometimes the next right thing is a prayer. Sometimes it's a hard conversation that's postponed. Maybe it's postponed because you need to get regulated. You need to calm the F down, right? So momentum beats motivation every time. Consistency is what's going on. And again, guys, if you haven't jumped in the Skool group and you're like, hey, what's some of the stuff you're talking about? Look, there's the frameworks, there's the systems, there's the modules. I have the whole fast system that's in there of what to do, how to get through it, and how to get accountable to it. And if you want to accelerate your life in the next 30 to 90 days, have the best year of your life, I suggest you get in there, and I suggest you do the work, and your life will transform if you get accountable. So a couple things, and I'll give you this tools for the daily SSS reset. So the daily SSS reset is like this. What's your state? What's your story? What's your strategy? How do I feel in my body right now? What's your state? Are you tired, exhausted, fearful, worried, anxious? Become aware to how I feel in my body right now. Am I tense? My shoulders up? How am I breathing? Right? What's my energy like? Because then we're going to get into your story. The next S is your story. What am I telling myself? What am I telling myself about this day? I had to interrupt myself this morning. I had gone on a walk and I was praying, and I had just woken up, and there were some things that went on. My son was injured, and I was a little bit worried about it, and I was a little bit fearful about it. And I went on a walk and I started to pray, and I had this story in my mind, and as I was walking and as I was praying, I just said, hey, this story is going to shift. I'm going to interrupt this pattern. This story is going to shift about, hey, you know what? We got the right people that are going to work on him. We got the right people that he's going to get checked out, looked at. He's going to be fine. He's going to be walking. He's going to be stable. Everything's going to be great for him. My story started to change. We will find what we need. There's nothing to worry about. And the strategy changed. I waited a little bit of time. We started to work things out. He's getting it worked out. We've got some help, some people he's going to go see, some specialists, some things like that. It's all worked out. My state changed. My story changed. My strategy changed. Use this in the morning. Use this when you feel anxious, when you feel worried, when you feel fearful, when you're all of those things, before hard conversations, before big decisions. These are the moments when you've got to cut the wire and you got to rewire it to the right story and the right strategy for your life, who you are becoming. So here's this week's challenge. Do not make decisions in a dysregulated state. That's something you got to say to yourself. I don't make decisions in a dysregulated state. And I make decisions in a regulated state. I am regulated all day long. I understand how to control my emotions. I understand how to control my state. So we want to pause, we want to reset, and then we want to act, because regulated men build faster. Facts. I was watching the Bears the other week, and cardiac Bears. No, they're gone now. And as you guys know, I'm a diehard Bears guy. So a lot of talk with Caleb Williams, a lot of talk with in the games, what he was saying, what he was thinking, what was going on. And as you know, the Bears have had many, many games where they should have lost. And they asked Caleb a lot about it. And he was just in a regulated state, not nervous, not worried, not fearful. When you watch some of the greatest athletes of all time, they're in regulated states, down by 15. down by 30. Tom Brady talking about, you know, what his state was in the Super Bowl when they came back to win it. Regulated state. The same rules apply for you. The man you're becoming is a regulated state that understands how to change his story, that understands how to change his strategy. Nothing is impossible. And that's the way that we work, and that's the way that we flow, and that's what you're working into. And this year will be the greatest year of your life. You jump in the Skool group, you get accountable, you start doing the tools and the worksheets. You change your state, your story, your strategy. You build out who you're becoming. You stop living life by default. You start living life by design. And you begin to do that every single day, just like Frozen, the next right thing. I'll leave you with that. I love you guys. I'm rooting for you and praying with you. God bless you. I'll see you on the next one.